So I really, truly want to thank everybody for being here, staff, residents. This meeting is for you, obviously. I'm actually going to be turning this over to Mr. O'Grady, Mr. Peters, and, this is your time to, go over, ask questions. If you have anything afterwards as well, you can email myself. I'm sure Mr. O'Grady as well, and Mr. Peters. So, but, this is your time, and I want y'all to feel free to ask questions, and then if we don't have the answer, we'll get those answers for you, okay? But again, thank you. Mr. O'Grady?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And City Manager John Peters is in the back. My name is John O'Grady. I'm a consultant brought in by the City of Deltona to just look at the enforcement services, code enforcement, animal control, and solid waste. And part of what we're going to do are these town hall meetings, one in each district, and just hear from you, the people. The code enforcement works for you. And that's the first step that we need to start. So what we're going to do is we'll go through all the supervisors. Enforcement Services code enforcement has 4 supervisors, and they're each going to take a piece of this, and they will introduce themselves when they get up here, and then, like I said, go over a little piece each. And once we're done, we'll take questions. So please be respectful of each other and distancing. Walk up to the microphone, and you can ask your question. So we're going to deal on the 10,000 foot level. If you have an individual address and issue, we would prefer to take that offline, and we'll take your complaint right here. But out of respect for everybody and their time, and as Vice Mayor said, thank you for coming out at 7 o'clock at night. So if there's an individual issue with an individual neighbor or something of that sort, we'll take it offline. But with that said, if it's a parking issue with that individual neighbor, come up and ask about parking or debris. So we don't want to center it on one house, but we want to keep it up for the issues, and we'll be able to go through it on what we do. So code enforcement is City of Deltona employees. Right? A lot of them, I have found, live right here in the city. So they are residents and employees at the same time. Our main focus is compliance, and you're going to hear that several times. It's not punitive, it's just compliance. That's the goal of code enforcement. We take the ordinances and regulations in some of the state statutes that are appropriate, and we enforce them. The regulations and ordinances are implemented by your commission. Once again, they work for you. You voted them in. They enacted these ordinances and codes, and they go to enforcement services to be enforced. One of the things, again, I want to put out there is compliance. So life and health issues, safety, quality of life issues, all those are what we're here for, and that's what they do. If there's a health and safety violation, that's why we're there. All right, and I know we're going to go into just a couple of the buzzwords: hoarders, all right, or debris in the yard and something of that sort. And they're going to go through the process with you, but that's what we're here for. And a lot of times you say beautification of the neighborhood, but that can be defined several ways. But it's quality of life issues, and to keep the value of your homes at a certain level. Okay, that's appropriate. Yes, and that is my part. Like I said, at the end, I'll come back up and then I'll facilitate the questions. But I think Mark, you're up next.
Thank you, John. Good evening. My name is Mark Gibson. I'm currently employed with the City of Deltona as Supervisor of Code Enforcement. I've been employed with the city for approximately 23 years. My employment started here in the City of Deltona in 1998 as a permit clerk. Like I stated earlier, I'm currently one of the 2 supervisors for code enforcement. What I'm going to try and do is give you a brief history of Deltona's code enforcement. We were incorporated as a city from Volusia County in 1995. Although we had become a city, Volusia County was still responsible for code enforcement until 1996. Then the city decided to establish its own code enforcement department in order to provide better, more efficient service for the citizens of Deltona. At this time, code enforcement issues were governed by a code enforcement board. The code enforcement board was dissolved in 2004, and the city hired a special magistrate to preside over its code enforcement proceedings. What we have here is a graph to give you an idea of the number of staffing we had compared to the population growth from the beginning of code enforcement to our current staff population now. You'll notice as the city population continues to grow, the number of staffing has fluctuated. In 2008, you'll notice staffing was at its highest, but between 2008 and 2010, then dropped due to the recession. This slide is to give you a visual depiction of the rapid growth in population in comparison of staffing. So I just want to give you a minute to take a look at that so you can notice the rise and the decrease in the population now. Staggered there. So at this point, Dan Ron will continue with the rest of this presentation. It's there.
Well, good evening. My name is Damien Ron. I'm the Customer Service Supervisor for the Department of the Building and Enforcement Services. If you just happen to call a complaint or to find out about a permit, that's the department that I cover. What we're going to look at is these are the top code violations and the number of code cases we've had in a comparison from 2019 to 2020. So on the left-hand side, it might be difficult to see from a distance, but the left-hand side has the numbers for 2019, and then on the right-hand side for 2020. As you can see, just short of 2,000 cases from year to year. It's just another graph of the comparison for those two same year. Our number one code case that we have to address starting January 1st, so far this year for 2021, has been parking inoperable vehicles. So this number has been taken mid-March, so from January 1st to mid-March, we've dealt with 1,361 cases just with vehicles in the city limits. And that covers the parking inoperable. Second category from the beginning of the year through mid-March is debris and high grass. Trash in the front yard, items out there that shouldn't be out there, that should be stored inside. This is what covers that. That number is still not as bad, but guess what? The rainy season hasn't kicked in yet, and I'm sure as soon as it hit us, we're going to be out there addressing those lawn violations. That number is definitely going to go way up. All right, so how does a responsive city government achieve code compliance for the benefit of the entire community? Well, there's ways for the community to be out there and pointing out stuff for us. Which way? How can you get that information to us? And these are different ways you can do that. We have one number for code enforcement. It's the 386-878-8700. That's our main line. We also have an app that we can use if you're an iPhone user or an Android. There's actually an app that's called My311 Deltona, and you can actually put in complaints there within the city limits of, for violations within the city limits of Deltona. Our city website, there's different places in our city website to contact us with issues. You can put a complaint there also. We also have an email for code enforcement, and it's codeenforcement@deltonafl.gov. So the first screen, the previous screen shows what we get, coming in through the office. Proactive. That's what we call is when the officer is out there already in the vehicle and out there in the neighborhood and he's seeing violations. So it's not just getting complaints coming in, there's also the officer being out in the community, observing violation and starting code cases. All right, the notice, the most common notice I'm actually got one here, it's called a door hanger. It's the yellow one, and the yellow one covers the code enforcement portion of it. There's a listing of the most common code violations, and the ones we pretty much address most of the time. It's already listed on here. There's 3 things on here. One is what the violation is. The second part is how to correct that violation, and on the very top is a place for when the time period that we give, so the officer, when the code comes back, we're hoping it comes into compliance. Other names for this door hanger are called, we call them courtesy notice, warnings. So when you get one of these, it's a 7-day period. So we're hoping if within the 7 days, the violation gets corrected. We'll go back there, so 7 days, we can just close out the case. This is my flow chart here. So we see the violation, we start there, we leave a door hanger, 7 days. Come back after 7 days, if the case is being taken care of, compliance on its own with the owner taking care of it, or the resident at the location, we close out the case. If it's not in compliance, then we go to the next step, okay? And the next step will be it's called the abatement or the notice of violation. Depending on what type of case, you use that type of notice. But now, with this notice, with this notice is the official notice. When we post this notice on the property, we also have to send this certified mail to the property owner that's listed under the property appraiser's record. We want to make sure that owner has been noticed, because most of the time, it's something we do have a lot of renters here in the area. They want to make sure the owner is aware that there's a violation at the home that they own. So that's a 10-day period. 10 days goes by. If it's in compliance, we close the case out. If it's not in compliance, we're still having an issue there at that location, we take the next step. And that will be that officer is going to be preparing for the notice of hearing. What the notice of hearing is, we're going to prepare to take this case in front of a special magistrate. Ms. Angela Myers is going to continue on. She is our special magistrate clerk, and she has a lot of information for you on the notice of hearing with the special magistrate.
My name is Angela Meyer, and I am the Administrative Supervisor for Building and Enforcement Services, and also the hearing clerk. So like Annie explained, the hearing is the last step to get the violator to come into compliance. The special magistrate, it will be ruling on those cases. The notice is sent over to the violator, and he will come to the hearing, and we really suggest that you really come so the magistrate can take a look at the case from all point of view of the city and the violator, and then he can make his rulings. The special magistrate is an attorney and a member of the Florida Bar, and he's appointed by the city commission to work on those rulings on code issues. The rulings by the special magistrate can be from up to $250 a day, and if it's a repeat violation, it might come up to $500 a day. So that's a very serious situation that we need to take care of before it becomes a fine and a burden to us. The decision by the special magistrate on those cases are final, so if you want to appeal to that decision, you need to go to the circuit of court and file an appeal in 30 days. The special magistrate make his decision on rulings based on the 3 things: the seriousness of the violation, if the violator took actions to try to fix the problem, and and also the history of the property, if there has been a lot of violations related to that case. So it's really important that if you come to the magistrate hearings, if you receive a notice of hearing, then you need to let him know what is stopping you from coming to compliance. Continuing this will be Richard, who will be talking about how we are now.
How you doing? I'm Richard Lovett. I'm one of the Enforcement Services Supervisors. I've been with this department since 2000. Where were we in 2000? Residents were hit hard with financial issues caused by the recessions of 2007. Foreclosed and vacant properties continued to soar, and code found themselves expanding their roles to combat these challenges. While the city had a decrease in the number of officers over the last 12 years, the code department has worked hard to keep the same quality of service to the citizens as we grew larger. The future of code enforcement is building relationships and having knowledge of the community's needs. It's integral to a positive professional code enforcement approach. Code enforcement will be able to navigate the needs and wants of the citizens once they properly evaluate the strengths and challenges they are facing. Code employees and citizens must collaborate on their needs and issues in this area. Citizens working cohesively with code enforcement will help the code department create a centric path to help correct the code issues in their area. Reaching compliance. This is something that we reached out and came up with a list to try and find stuff for citizens. We've worked with several different agencies, including some that aren't on this list. If they're not on this list and you know about them, please contact us and let us know who they are, who their contact person is, reach out to them, and see what they do offer to our citizens. A lot of these companies, they'll do stuff and they don't want to be recognized. We'll send over all whoever needs the help. We'll send over their information. They'll go out there and talk to them, and they'll go out and help them. There's been no cost to the citizens. So, one department, 3 missions. So, in the code enforcement department, we do not only code enforcement, animal control, we also take care of all the trash issues in the city. By combining all 3 of these departments, allows the code personnel to handle all the cases at the property. The city of Deltona is not the only one in this area to adopt this combination. Several cities across the United States are starting to combine their departments to be more efficient for residents in the area. This has been shown to be best business practices models across the country. In conclusion, code enforcement officers support enhanced quality of life while working to keep aging buildings, homes, and properties from becoming eyesores. The main thing is raising your property values, not letting it go down because of an eyesore next door. This is our current staff as of today. The field staff includes 6 officers that have the required training for the job, 3 officers that are waiting to take classes due to COVID restrictions, and 2 officers that have attained the highest level of accreditation for code enforcement. And I'll turn it back over to John.
So one of the things I wanted to point out before we get to questions, thank you, Richard, is the 3 missions. And it works out perfectly. One of the tasks that I had when I came in here from the city was, do we need to split that up? Do we need to separate code enforcement, solid waste, and maybe do something with animal control, possibly give it to the county? One of my first conversations with Mr. Peters was, no, best practices nationwide. Best practice nationwide is to keep that group together, because now you have 1 truck, 1 officer going out there doing 3 functions. It's a more efficient, effective use of the taxpayer money instead of having 3 different individuals on the same potential neighborhood. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Like I said earlier, come on up. ask us your question, and if it's an individual address, we'll get offline with you and we will take the complaint for you. But as I said, let's just keep it at if it's parking or if it's debris or something of that sort. Someone's got to be first.
Hello, a couple questions. One is, I don't think it's a secret that there's a rift per se between the community and code enforcement in Deltona. There's been for a while with a lot of controversy. What specific steps are you guys planning on doing to change policies, practices, procedures to address those issues? And number two, can you explain, are your officers assigned to an area so that that officer gets to know that area, or does one officer cover the whole city? So like, is there a District 2 officer that gets to go around and know those people and handle that area, kind of get that familiarity going?
So I'll answer the first part, and then Richard, I'll let you answer the second part. So the first part, I was brought in because of that rift that you've mentioned, to look at it, and I will tell you, I've been here a month and a half-ish. The city has a very tenured group that has the certifications, that have the passion for the job, that want to do the job. So somewhere there is a disconnect, and we've talked about it between them and the community. So it starts right here. And then it starts starting in May, it starts at the HOAs. It starts going, the community involvement, we have to outreach to the community and go there and give the information and take the complaints and be more proactive, as Danny went over, than reactive. So I think there's a lot of that happening right now, and we've heard you loud and clear, and I think you will see the changes. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now, all the way from how they look when they get out of the truck to how the truck looks. So we're just taking best practices from around the nation, and we're going to bring them here to Deltona. We're going to mix them in, because Deltona's special, and Deltona might have their own flair. So we're going to take the best practices, we're going to put them all together, bring them to the city manager, who'll bring them to the commission, and we're going to decide which direction they're going to go. But they will be going. Richard, if you want to answer districts, et cetera.
Yeah, so currently the city, the way we have it split up is the city is split up into 4 different zones. So, and in 4 of those zones, you have an officer working 7 days a week. So we try and keep the districts, we try and level out to the same amount of houses. So that way not one officer is more overwhelmed than the other. So yeah, everything's split into 4 districts. We work 7 days a week, 7 to 7. So, and then after that, we're on call for emergency animal control calls. But yeah, we try and always have somebody in an area.
But is
7 days a week.
it the same officer for that district all the time, or is it any officer can go to any district, it's just that district has a person covering it at any time?
If we have somebody on vacation and we get a call over there, then it would be somebody else. But normally, an officer is assigned to that area, in that area only.
So let me just follow up on that. So there's actually 2 officers in each district. The issue that I have been finding when I go out and talk to residents at my meetings is John O'Grady showed up on Monday through Thursday, and then Jose Ortiz showed up Wednesday through Sunday. And so I looked into that, and there is some cross-pollination, but we are working on the communication, so those officers, when they look in there is a case already on 123 Main Lane. So Jose took that out, so John O'Grady doesn't have to deal with it, but John O'Grady should deal with it because we're partners in the same district. So we're working to enhance the pride, taking pride of each district, and those 2 officers working together, although they're on different squads. So, did I see a question? Can you come on up? Thank you.
I was just going to mention, Richard, just because of the background that I have, it's something that we always got a lot of complaints about, the after-hours calls. Can you explain what you will respond to on an after-hours call?
Well, and to get back on that, I think we want to handle the animal control calls at a different time.
Yeah, we'll be circling around the animal control. So go ahead, Richard.
We'll get back to that one when we come back in May and do animal. But we're trying to stick to really to code enforcement and solid waste of these, and then we'll come back to animal on the next ones.
But to answer the question, we do have on-call officers that will respond out right now to animal control. But to the point here, there may be solid waste or code enforcement issues that we need to back up the sheriff's office or something of that sort if they do a search warrant and they need code enforcement in there for the other violations. We will be coming out to those as well. So thank you for that question there. And one thing I want to point out that Richard and the rest of the group have said, these guys are out there 7 days a week, which is a national best practice, which maybe some of our neighbors in other cities do not do. And they do the 3 functions, the 3 missions, which once again is a best practice, which maybe some of our neighbors do not do. So all the structures here, you know, we got good bones, so to speak. So, you know, we're going to keep moving forward and bring it back up to the level that it should be at. Any other questions?
My question is, when you do a complaint, is it an anonymous complaint, or the officer will go and tell your neighbor that you complain about them?
Danny? You handle the, you did the reactive proactive?
Yes, we get complaints all the time. Now, when we, let's say if it's by email, everything's public record that comes through our office. Now, if you say you want to stay anonymous, you are anonymous. We can only put down what we get from you. So let's just say, but sometimes we might need assistance from the caller. Maybe something we don't have, let's say a complaint that's in the backyard. We don't have access to backyards. We have to get permission from somebody to view a violation in the backyard. So sometimes we need assistance from the caller. Please, will you allow us to have access to your yard in the back? That way we can see the violation that's next door that we can't see from the front of the house. Yes, if you want to stay anonymous, you are anonymous. But now, anything that comes through, let's just say an email comes through, guess what? If that name is on there, it's considered public record, and anybody can request that access for that information.
No, I understand that part. I just wanted to, like, really understand, because, you know, you want a beautification of the city, but you don't want to have problems with the neighbor all the time and putting neighbors against neighbors. It's not right.
So that's an excellent question. So let me ask the supervisor, is there a mechanism right now in place to be anonymous?
Yeah,
Okay, what is that?
they can call in and make a complaint over the phone. And then your phone number and all that will not be added unless you ask.
Do we have a text to tip?
The live people wouldn't follow on this. You can't do
Right, right. So there's a couple other ways, but thank you, that was a great question. So right now, phoning in, but we'll start working on other, with technology, how it is, text a tip, you know, we can have neighbors taking pictures or somebody driving by, take a video and be able to send it in. And all that helps us with the evidence going forward. So, any other questions?
You all say you want to be compliant, not punitive. So there was one of your slides that you had a whole list of people, like the ship, I don't even remember the other names that were on there, but there was a whole list of places that you reach out to. Thank you for whoever's going back there for me, that you reach out to. When do you reach out to them? At what point do you reach out to them for help, to help the citizen? I mean, have you identified that, okay, we know that this house belongs to Miss Smith, she's 67, she can't get out and mow her lawn? Or do y'all just keep going back and saying, okay, you're not in compliance, you're not in compliance? Here's information of who you can reach out to.
No, and we get that a lot of information from talking to people. So if we know she's 67, she's telling us, hey, I just can't cut my grass, I can't afford it, then yeah, we're gonna reach out and we're gonna reach some companies to try and find her some help. Because the main thing is we understand everybody falls through and gets on hard times, and we wanna help them out. So the last thing we wanna do is find them. So that's what we do, we don't get that information unless they talk to us. So if they don't talk to us, yes, we're going to go ahead and do that abatement. But if they talk to us, we can understand that, we'll forward that information on to them out.
So, and I'll follow up on that, and then obviously you might have another question, but so through my interviews with them, there's a lot of stories they don't tell, and I'm working with the communications department on Deltona, I'm telling those stories. I mean, one or two of them, when they come to a house that they got called to, and there is a elderly person there who's a hoarder, so somebody's up here helping them. That is not a good thing. If they fall down in there or whatever, or the fire department calls us, or the sheriff's office calls us, those are stories that don't get out there that we need to get out there. The grass, when they can't cut their grass, we send them out there. Guess who pays for it? A lot of times, if they can't afford it, the city's going to do that. But it goes to the whole process of what we're trying to do to make your neighborhoods acceptable and beautiful.
Okay, so on that point there, you're saying that the city's gonna pay for it, so is that back to being punitive? Okay, now we've cut your grass and now we're gonna charge you because we've cut your grass?
So it goes back to your original question. When we go there and talk to the 67-year-old person who says, I'm handicapped, I can't mow my lawn, I live alone, I'm a widower or widow, and I can't do that, we will try to set up the services. And as Richard said to begin with, a lot of these services that we go out to, they'll do it, and they'll have a benefactor that will take care of it. The punitive comes into the person who can cut their yard, who can afford to cut their yard, just doesn't cut their
Being
yard,
lazy about it.
and then we go ahead and charge them that, and if it comes down to it, they go through the process and there'll be a lien on their house.
And I completely understand that aspect
Yes,
of it, when you're
yes.
able and you're capable and you're
Right.
just being lazy
Right.
and you don't do it.
So believe me, they go to, and I've been here 6 weeks or 2 months, they go to every length. For whatever reason, there's a perception that they don't, but they do.
Is there a way that I can get a copy of this particular slide?
Yeah, I'm sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We're not talking about animals this time?
No, that'll be the next round of town hall meetings. It's a totally separate, although they handle all
Well,
three.
it's all together, because it has to do with the way the houses look
Yep.
when they're putting animals' food up there,
Mhm.
so
And there's a method to my madness, and we'll go to the animals on the next round.
I'll be there.
Okay. Vice Mayor, anything in closing?
You know, I want to make sure, and it seems like you guys have been addressing a lot of the community concerns. You know, personally, I'm gonna be honest, I've had to deal with residents calling me up, and every time I have called in, they have been magnificent. I know there's been several occasions where, just like he said, the individual was like, hey, I need more time, and they eagerly documented and gave them more time, and they worked with them. But the key is this, they've got to reach in as well. You know, they've gotta be there and say, you know, not just ignore it and hope it goes away, but by being proactive themselves and calling in and saying, hey, this is the situation, they're not aware of the situation. You know, I can think of other situations as well where they may call me and I talk to them, and at the same time, it's a whole different story that I'm getting than what has happened, and they tell one person they just got a notice where the notice is months old that they've been already trying to work with. So that's where these tales can sometimes, when they get up, you know, makes it sound a lot worse than it is. You know, but for the most part, like you're saying, these guys are 7 days a week. It's pretty grueling, you know, even on the weekends. And I love the look. I love the image that Deltona is getting with this. You know, one of the other concerns, Mr. O'Grady, if you can address it, is violations in the neighborhood. And how are we handling now if, and I know sometimes it may have been an anonymous complaint of, hey, this specific home like they're addressing, and then you go and you look at that and you're like, yes, but then we're getting the calls of, hey, this home was code enforced, but then these 3 neighbors have the same situation. So what are we doing to address that? Because I think it's not so much that they went just to pick on that home, it's that was more that mission, and then maybe, so that I think has been the biggest complaint.
Right.
And you know, it's like I had even said earlier, is if we've got one home that we're targeting, but we have 3 more lawns right here, or we have, this home has this car, but 2 doors down, there's the same thing, just to make sure that if we're gonna hit a block, let's hit the block.
Right. Right. And so, so sweeps, that's one of the issues that we brought up. So We've been talking about the sweeps that they just finished going through everybody's district and doing the sweeps. So we've sat down and said, how can you guys do it better? Because it has to come from here. They're the boots on the ground. How can you do these sweeps better? And that's one of the ways there. If I'm reactive because I got a call and I'm up there and I see this neighborhood is at the verge of being controlled, that, one of the suggestions that came up, that has to be a sweep neighborhood. And we're doing it on, and they're deciding when they want to do it. We're maybe a 6-week basis or a 3-week basis, depending upon the rotation. But sweeps will be more frequent, but more effective. And we're doing the analysis now in the sweeps. So to get more to your point, when an officer shows up there, there's a lot of things that go into that. They're addressing that house. They're carrying a large amount of cases, between 60 to 100. National best practices is like 45. So when we're looking at that, and I'm not making excuses for code enforcement, they should address all those. But it's going to come in, we got to train the officers that when you see those other violations, when you're pulling out to go to your other case, then you need to call it in, and we're going to make it part of our sweep, and we're going to get right back on it. And it comes down to those 2 officers in that district communicating better and working together. Because if I can't get to it, I'm going to have to call John O'Grady, who comes in tomorrow, and I'm going to say, hey, can you make a run by on that street? I might have missed a couple of houses.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Peters.
Just very quickly, part of what the purpose of bringing John in was to take a look at the national standards of where we are. If you saw the graph earlier, where we had more officers back in the 2000s before the economy crashed, that would probably, if we had maintained that, we would be in much better shape right now. Unfortunately, when you fall behind, it takes a while to catch up. Mr. Grady's already given me an initial estimate of how many more officers we need. We're going to put it into the budget. We're going to get everybody trained fully. I have a great deal of confidence in the staff up here that we're going to see better days ahead, because you see, we don't have the level of officers. I have run code enforcement before. John has run code enforcement before. When you get to over 45 cases, it becomes extremely difficult to do your job well. That's literally when you go out on Newmark, as I did on a Sunday, and I saw 21 improperly parked vehicles, properties. That's not a reflection on them, it's just the workload. If you've already got 100 cases and you barely keep up, how can you add 21 more? So we're going to get them the resources that they can be able to address this. I believe budgetarily we're in pretty good shape to be able to make these changes. And once we start catching up, then it will be much easier to keep the city a place that we all want to live and work and play. And so I want to thank John, I want to thank the entire staff, the management team, but code compliance. A lot of y'all probably haven't seen on a day-to-day basis, but they changed their uniforms. The uniforms themselves showed that they're more open. They used to work in what I call SWAT style uniforms. I thought it was a bad image. So one of the first things that John did is we changed the uniforms, and it's much more customer friendly. And we're looking at changing the name potentially from code enforcement to something more friendly.
So thank you, Mr. Peters. And in closing, when I first met with everybody, I said the word process. And I said, by the end, when I step out the door, you're going to hate the word process. But that's what it's all about. They have to be good stewards of your money. So we're in the process of telling our story. And part of that is the budget. So if we have to tell a compelling story, we just can't go to the city manager and say, we need 10 more people. We have to back it up with facts. We have to back it up with why and what our goals are. So if we get 2 more people, we have to defend that because it's your money that we're spending. So we have to give it a compelling story to the city manager so he can go to the commission. and just say, look, this is what we want to do, this is why, and this is what we need, here's our goals, here's our strategy, and now you can hold us accountable. And that's the end of the process, is the accountability part. So I want to thank everybody for showing up, and we have 6 more of these meetings. So if you tell a neighbor to come to the meetings and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you.